to have the arts be viewed as non-essential kind of stung.
But I do think it's important for the creative people to have that little safety net, somewhere where you can grow, where you can thrive.
Well, it was just interesting that she mentioned that, because when I think safety, I think health. And when I think health, especially here in the United States, that alludes to health care, which now we all have just lost for the people that got laid off at Cirque du Soleil. What we do is we put our best foot forward, and then we take one step at a time. Like, there's your choreography, 5, 6, 7, 8, go.
Done.
Welcome to the TheatreArtLife Podcast, and hello. We're putting the spotlight on those who create live entertainment around the globe, the culture creators and the backstage masters. My name is Anna Robb.
And my name is Ana Aguilera.
And today we are talking COVID special. It's a COVID special podcast, and we're here with my co-host, Anna, and Johnny Kim, the artistic director.
Hey.
And Johnny is on downtime right now in San Diego, and Anna is in North Carolina, and I'm in Hong Kong. And we had a discussion the other day about COVID and the industry, and we thought we would talk a little bit further about this on the podcast to highlight the issues and the situation currently the global community of the arts is going through. And I wanted to talk about, especially with Johnny, because he has some great input and a point of view that is interesting to share, and to sort of explain to the world that, you know, a lot of people are, this is not just a job for people in entertainment. And there's a lot of distress in the fact that we are one of the industries that went down the first, and will likely be one of the industries to come back the last. And what do we do as a community in the downtime? And start to throw it over to Johnny in terms of, you know, what is he's experienced with the group that he works with intimately as an artistic director and the company. And then we'll dig into a little bit further about what this means on a global scale. So Johnny, how did it go down for you?
Just like everyone else, it was very abrupt with no true end in sight, you know, because I think at the time, just like everybody, we thought it was temporary, thought it was all going to blow over and that everything would just go back. And then as things progressively got worse, you know, now it's in July and we're realizing that things are pretty bad, you know, in the world, the political sense, economy, travel restrictions. I mean, the list just is endless. And I think the main thing is that, well, at least for me, you know, when we look at the media and how we're being portrayed, you know, there was a lot of discussion like a month ago about what's essential and non-essential, which I get it in a way, but at the same time, we have to think about if we're looking at an economy, everyone's essential, right? But to have the arts be viewed as non-essential kind of stung. And I think a lot of people feel that sting, but for me, it truly had a trigger of bringing back to my childhood where me doing anything artistic was a hobby, that it was going to garner no money and it was a waste of time. And so having that kind of view come back into my face, even in the position that I'm in as an artistic director, was heartbreaking. Like, it just brought me back to a very dark place of how we are perceived. And the other side of it is the slap in the face when entertainment is consumed on the daily, you know, with live streaming things. And I remember when everything shut down, everyone was doing free ballet classes and doing Zoom this and Zoom that. And now, you know, there's platforms that are releasing Hamilton and doing all this stuff to just give, but we don't get anything in return. I just feel like we're just getting bashed down to the ground when everyone consumes music, art, all the time. And somehow we're viewed as less than. And that just, it triggers me. Honestly, it does.
And on a practical level, there's, you know, some really distressing stories about people being, their jobs and livelihoods are being affected by the situation. So you did have an example that you spoke to me a while ago about a family who'd been on tour for a while but have now nowhere to go. Do you want to sort of go into details of some of the ways that COVID has really uplifted or uprooted their existence?
Yeah, I mean, I have so many examples, but in that example specifically, you know, sometimes you're looking at a very talented athlete that has turned to performing as a new way of life. And in getting into Cirque, I have artists that have been there for more than a decade. So they've honed into this skill to make a living. And it's very specific. There's circus apparatus out there that is very specific to where even if you wanted to train something, sometimes you need a partner. Like if we're looking at Russian bars, for example, at Totem, if you're a porter in that, you need your bookend porter, you need a bar, and you need a flyer. So they're very specific of what they do, and they've had this longevity to where this is now the only thing that they do. And they're at that physical age to where they're going to just continue this until they can't anymore, because trying to start all over and competing with all these up and coming young artists that do so many other things as well, it's not that feasible. So it's almost like you get locked into this system where you still enjoy what you're doing, you still have a job, and you still get to perform, and you create a life for yourself with getting married, having children, buying a home. But at the same token, you're also escaping like a war-ridden country sometimes, or a place with such political mess that it would just be not an option to go back. And I've experienced that in a lot of shows where, people have become devastated because the end of the contract meant they had to go back to their home country, which is not necessarily always somebody's case, right? And so when you take that livelihood away, and there's going to be a lot of people on the other spectrum that say, yeah, well, you shouldn't have that job define you as a person, because that's just a huge part of you, but that's not all you are. But the thing is, when you have some of these circumstances like this, it becomes all encompassing, because, you also will then have people that had been in the circus because of their family. So they were a part of it since they were younger, and they know nothing else but the circus, and they will continue doing this for forever. And so with something like COVID, where it breaks it up, and it was not your choice, but it's not just your show or your specific art, it's the entire industry, where that means you have no other avenue to go to. That means you're cut off completely, and you had no choice and no closure. And, everyone's then in that moment of trying to figure out what to do next. And there's always going to be that criticism of like, well, you should have thought of a plan B. I mean, I can just remember my parents, you should have thought of something else. You should have prepared for this because this is a hobby. You should have, you know what I mean? But when you're so passionate about something and you go out there and you do it and you get it and you live it and it becomes your livelihood and you set your life up around it, and then it's taken away. Yes, it has become your life, and it's been taken away, and it's devastating. We're not going to sit here and just say, well, I can just apply for other jobs, because, the stress and anxiety of trying to see what transferable skills you have after all this time not doing anything else but that one thing. You know what I mean?
I think that something that you mentioned, and it's very key, both for, like, I can speak for the technician side as well, or the technical side and the artistic, is that we're passionate about what we do. We don't, or at least most of us, we don't just like choose this industry because it's the one that's going to pay us best. To be here, we're here because we love what we do. So yes, to a point, our jobs become, or are part of who we are, because it takes so much of us to get to where we are, to be able to actually make a living out of it, to be good at what we do. It's not something that we just like, oh, I woke up today and I'm a really good show caller. Well, not really. It just doesn't happen like that. So it's really hard for us. And then someone comes, and as you were saying, oh yeah, so we don't think that what you do and what you're really good at is important, although we do want it to get by right now. So, like, it's all of this that you're saying, like, we're passionate, and it really is part of who we are and who we become.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, they're telling us that it's something that's not important, but they want it for free right now because it's important for someone else, but they just can't pay us to do it. So it's rough. It hurts. It does hurt.
Yeah.
Not to mention, part of our industry is all consuming, and we talk a lot about balance and mental health, and that's a whole other realm of conversation. But the reality is, you go on tour for Cirque, or you go and do projects, it becomes your life. You pick up a family, you're trying to move through a show, whether this be for one moment or for a tour or reoccurring instances. It's really something that you have to, it's not a 9 to 5 clock in, clock out aspect of your job. It's something that you'll do for 16 hours a day. And a lot of the time, historically, people would always ask me, why do you work so hard, Anna? Why do you work so hard? And my response was, I'd rather work 16 hours a day of something that I loved than 8 I hated. And I've really lived like that. And I want to read this to you because this is something that I think sums up exactly what we're saying. It's a quote by James A. Michener, and I've just pulled it up so I can read it because I cannot know it off the top of my head. But it really explains for me the working in the arts. And it goes like this. The master in the art of living makes little distinction between his work and his play, his labour and his leisure, his mind and his body, his information and his recreation, his love and his religion. He hardly knows which is which. He simply pursues his vision of excellence at whatever he does, leaving others to decide whether he is working or playing. To him, he is always doing both.
Amazing.
And I think that really sums up the industry, right?
Yeah, I resonate so well with that because that's how I was able to push through going against the expectations of me being an electrical engineer or a pharmacist or a doctor.
I cannot see you as an electrical engineer. This is a funny image in my head.
I know. I even took mechanical drafting in high school, and I was good at it. At the end, when I got that A, I was like, well, okay, I'm good at it, but it doesn't mean I like to do it. So yeah, to be able to, I love that quote. You're going to have to send that to me.
I will do that. I will
make a poster or something out of that. Oh, amazing.
Hey, I come back to it quite a lot when I'm struggling, I think. And, the older I get, the more I realize that it's really so important to stay on the track that you believe in and what you're passionate about, despite the circumstances. And I feel like, I've had a number of conversations with industry professionals about this current situation. And I think really another aspect to look at is an artist, whether they get paid or not. You can always create and you can always do that. It doesn't mean that perhaps you're going to have to go drive a truck for Sainsbury's for a while for the next 12 months. But that you cannot let that define you. You're an artist and you will continue to be an artist, whether that be a technical artist or a on-stage artist, because I also feel that technical people are also very creative beings, especially when we put the passion and their creative problem solving into putting on shows every day, which they do on the backside that nobody sees. And so from a mental health perspective, and I want you to weigh in on that a little bit, Johnny, too, in terms of how you think mentally people can get through this. But just because you may have to take another job for a period of time does not define you as a failure in this situation, right? It's just the way that what we're going to have to do. Each individual is going to have to keep doing to get through this period. And then at some point, the arts will rise again, maybe in a different form, maybe in a different shape. But that's where the creative people have the ability to contribute to navigating back onto the road of live performances and art in general.
I mean, the tricky thing about this time is that we can go back to that cliche starving artist where you move to New York City and before you book the gig, you're waiting tables. But we're in a period of time now where even restaurants are closing and or not opening because of the situation we're in. And the people that work there want to keep their job. So the opportunities are less than. So to then have to think even outside of the box of what your transferable skills are and what you can do to contribute to society, but also make a living to be able to survive is a whole nother ballgame. Because back in the day when we thought about those kind of parameters, you worked your butt off waiting tables so that you can go pay for the training in a gym at a space to do your stuff, to hone in your skills, to send that videotape submission, to go audition and do all those things, where those things don't exist anymore. It's all kind of wiped out, right? And I understand, that's why I want to kind of get that disclaimer that this is just a perspective. It doesn't represent everyone. And I know that there's other sectors of the world that are going through the same thing, but it's the nuances of the differences that really set us apart. And I think in order to be able to try and survive this, we kind of have to just acknowledge what we're going through and lend on each other to help lift each other up, because every situation is going to be different. Yes, there are artists that I've come across that are going to be fine because they've set up a business creating their own clothing, or they've created like a fitness channel that is now getting the hype to where people are paying for fitness instruction to do it in this specific way. Those kind of people have already started that pre-COVID. So that's going to be fine. But, the other spectrum, whether we talk about the people that don't want to go back to their war-ridden country or the people that can't go back because they can't afford it, and their livelihood was being the breadwinner of bringing the money back to their country in poverty. There's so many extremes to this. And the only way I think we can do is to help this is to acknowledge it and then lean on each other to try and get through this together, because every situation can be dire and extreme in so many different ways.
And every country is dealing with it differently. And some countries do have unemployment support, right? And people can go on unemployment for a period of time. That's the case for, say, Australia. It's not ideal. And then there's other situations in other countries where that is, like you said, far more devastating and damaging to people's lifestyles and existences. And, there's no one-stop solution of how to get through that. But I like you said, if you can help out and lean on each other and try and figure out a way to move forward and sort of speak up as well. I think from a mental health issues, if I knew that somebody was really struggling, I'd have to ask myself, what can I do to help? So don't suffer in silence is probably the situation. Anna, what do you think?
100%.
Well, it makes me think on, so when you, from a mental health point of view, to be able to create and to be able to be okay, you need certain stability, and you need to feel safe, and you need to know that your basics are met. And when we don't, then it doesn't matter how creative or good we are. It is really hard for us to create if we don't have food and somewhere to sleep, and we don't know that our family and the people we care for are okay. And I think you mentioned something very important, that there are some countries that can somehow provide and help artists or people, or that have unemployment or art funds, or you name it. And maybe that, I don't know, this just came to mind, but that would be like those artists that might get to that safe spot first or sooner than the rest could be a helping hand to the rest of the community. But I do think it's important for the creative people to have that little safety net, somewhere where you can grow, where you can thrive.
Well, it was just interesting that she mentioned that, because when I think safety, I think health. And when I think health, especially here in the United States, that alludes to health care, which now we all have just lost for the people that got laid off at Cirque du Soleil. And, there's another facet to that people may not be aware of, but, there are artists out there that are expecting a child and now have no health insurance, but are stuck in this country because of travel restrictions. So when we're looking at like the stability of the essential things that you need to survive, which is a roof over your head and food, but then you're about to bring a child into this world when everything is so uncertain because you've lost your job and your health insurance, but you're not from this country. It's just like the cards are so stacked against you. And that is the other spectrum of like, okay, this Broadway actor lost his job and this Cirque du Soleil artist lost their job, but everyone's story is so different. And we have to acknowledge that, because without that stability you were saying, Anna, we don't have the energy or the ability to even start to create, to do what we love to do, because we're just trying to survive and stay afloat and not drown,
And that then lends to, and not to get political, but structural issues with the way that jobs are created and you are working in the entertainment industry, right? If your health insurance is reliant on your job, which for me is a fundamentally flawed system, because, you don't have a job and you don't have health insurance. And again, I don't want to get into the politics of it, but those have massive, like you said, have massive ramifications when you're talking about somebody who works in the arts in, say, America versus Australia. Australia has a Medicare system that if you got COVID, you could go in, get treated, walk out without having to pay, $1 million worth of healthcare bills. It's not the case in the States. And so, and again, I wouldn't be able to talk off the top of my head about all of the other countries' health systems. Maybe, Anna, you have some more info from where, you're from and stuff. But for me, it's like those fundamental, you're talking about really Maslow's hierarchy of needs when you talk about security and safety. And Maslow's hierarchy of needs has that first layer has to be met prior to any further development of the human being. And so that's the fundamental thing to focus on for everybody right now, regardless of the industry, is that those needs are being met. And what a dramatic focus to be having to think about in 2020 as a global community of human beings, to focus on that. I mean, it's quite humbling, isn't it, to have to sit there and wipe out all of where we thought we were going and go back to really basic needs of, is everybody healthy? Is everybody getting fed? Is everybody got a roof over their heads? And it's overwhelming at times. And us being we're a very large aspect of the communities, but where they're often the side having our own second layer of issues as well.
For sure. And I don't even want to think what the people that are refugees or immigrants or have gone through natural disasters go through. Like, if we are somehow safe and it's been so hard to find and have our basic needs met, like those people that go through that for very long periods of time, I think it should definitely make us sit down and reflect and look around.
I mean, on a positive note too, it has forced people to be creative on how to be creative, to keep their spirit alive and keep what they do alive for the world to see at large. But not everyone has those resources either. Even if everyone went back to their home country successfully, it doesn't mean that everyone has that kind of resource when it comes to internet, space, filming. Everyone's doing all kinds of things, but I wish there was just somehow we could make that be, have some parity.
Yeah. And like you said, there's some really good things happening, like Liam's doing his Step for Circus hike. He got sick of stuck in his house and he's like, well, I'm going to go try and raise some money and get out of this funk. Terrence, stage manager and production manager in Vegas, has picked up a very important job of delivering medical supplies and is now hiring people in Vegas, part-time people who are in the industry, to help with that process. So he's doing very important work. It's not particularly enjoyable for him because it's not as exciting as entertainment, but again, you take a step aside and do something that's good for the community. And like you said, there are many, there's people are coming up with drive-in theatres right now in the UK, so that people can at least go see the movies and have that experience. And art thrives where, it's like that, it's like in the concrete, there's always the plant always like finds its way through to grow out through the concrete. And that's art. Like, art's always going to find its way to grow through the concrete like a plant does. And it's just and it's interesting to see how people have approached that. There's, obviously the streaming of Hamilton, but there's also the Old Vic in London's done some filming of a play, but have done it with cameras on stage and done a really interesting way to view a live performance as if you're on the stage, not as an audience member. So it's another view of, or another expression of art that hasn't been done before. So there's lots of stuff going on. And I keep looking to those, like you said, for beacons of hope, and share those experiences with the people around me as well. Yeah.
On the Cirque side, I mean, I have friends and colleagues, Jenny, Christina, and Scott, that have created this group called Worldwide Cirque Handshake.
Oh, I've seen that, yes.
Yeah, and the purpose of that is to get everyone past and present of Cirque to try and get together to celebrate what we have done, what we've been doing, and what we will do. But the best thing that I found about this platform is that they've structured it to where there's a mentorship program where if anyone wants to be mentored by somebody else in this group, because there's thousands of people now in the group, in anything to learn a new skill or whatever, that kind of connection is already set up to where you can offer your services, but then also like join. There's also a platform that they have within this Facebook page to help people understand where there are open housing. So if people that are stuck in certain countries due to COVID based on the shutdown, that cannot leave, that don't have a place to stay, there may be people out there that have a spare room and a spare couch and all that stuff, to try and lift each other up during this time, because not everyone is being able to stay afloat. And the beauty of this Facebook group is like unbelievable, to where it just brings a tear to my eye. I mean, people yes, can put in photos and show some fun memories, but the purpose is also to really stay connected, to help each other out, because it can be a very dark time for people that don't have the same amount of resources.
Well, I think we've solved the world's problems, right?
That's what we do.
It's one step at a time, right? Yes, exactly what we do. What we do is we put our best foot forward, and then we take one step at a time. Like, there's your choreography, 5, 6, 7, 8, go.
Done.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for your time again, Johnny. We really appreciate it. And I think as we go through the COVID period, I think you're one of the most positive people to help us through it. So thank you.
Definitely.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me. And thanks for letting me open up the discussion to start a dialogue, because who knows, maybe people have other thoughts or feelings or ideas to help progress us forward.
I think we should open like people who want to leave their comments or send feedback, or if you have a friend that's doing something cool, or if you're that friend that's doing something cool, just let us know, share it with the world so we can all support each other.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Great. Thanks again, Johnny. We'll talk soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Please write a review on our podcast whenever you listen to our podcast and let your friends know about us. You can learn more about Theatre Art Life by visiting our website at www.theatreartlife.com. And you can follow us on social media and leave your questions or comments on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Pinterest, Twitter, or YouTube. We really want to thank David Zaya for composing the music for our podcast, and Michelle Sharotta, who is our sound engineer. We are your hosts, Anna and Anna, and this is the Theatre Art Life Podcast, where we put the spotlight on those who create live entertainment around the world.